Welcome to another episode of the Silver BlackCast. It's your brother Marquise here with your boy Rocco and the on-air producer himself, the medical marvel, Dr. O. We're just a couple of Raider fans here trying to bring you a little bit of insight, some passion, and it's a little bit of chaos straight from the black hole. Every episode, we're going to break down into 4 segments, just like 4 downs on a football field. On first down, we're going to talk about our news and notes. What's hot? What's happening in Raider Nation? And on second down, we're going to break down the tight end and the wide receiver room and compare that to our division rivals. On third down, we're going to dive deep into Rocco's mind, and that's a scary, scary place. And on fourth down, where we never punt on your questions, you bring the heat and we'll bring the answers. So smash that like and subscribe button because it's another episode of the Silver BlackCast coming right at you. Let's get it. Rocco, my man.
Let's do it, brother.
You ready to go?
Yeah, what you got?
All right, Raider Nation, get ready for a bumpy ride. Here we go. Let's start here with our news and notes. Obviously, the big news of the notes we had an emergency pod is obviously the Christian Wilkins release. Have you heard anything new as the last couple of days have dropped by?
Yeah, nothing concrete, but Justina Anderson reported that she first reported that there's more to the story that we previously were aware of. And then I guess she further reported that there was some type of incident. And there's, been a bunch of rumors from there. Again, nothing concrete. Everyone's inferring it was a pretty big incident out of nowhere that was kind of the final straw. So there seems to be a lot of smoke and a little more going on behind the scenes than just the refusal of surgery and the frustration with the rehab and everything we had spoken about previous.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's a lot of things behind the scenes, guys. It sounds like the Raiders might have been putting up with a lot just because of how great of a player Christian Wilkins was and is. And unfortunately, we've been down this roller coaster before, and it never ends out well. And hopefully, through the arbitration, we'll be able to recoup some of that money from all things that has been reported. There's a good chance the Raiders will win this arbitration. And, some of that money will be able to go back into the cap, which would help us in the future. So hopefully that works out that way. Obviously not wishing anything poorly for Christian Wilkins, but I'm sure he'll get paid from somebody else. So I'm not too worried about his pocketbook.
Yeah, it sounds like to me, first and foremost with the injury, who knows when he's going to be ready to play. It's prolonged for way longer than initially anticipated. And now with, these reports, as vague as they may be, that he hasn't maybe bought in and it's been a problem for the organization and some type of incident, I think, we're better off for cutting our losses now.
Yeah, I don't want to speak ill of him, but if he wasn't bought in, then obviously this is a message that Pete Carroll and Spytech have sent that say we don't care who you are, we don't care how good you are, either you're in or you're out. And if you're not in, then we're getting you out, getting rid of you. And that's a message to everybody. If you're going to cut somebody who just signed a 4-year, $110 million deal, then you're going to cut the last guy on the roster or the first guy on the roster. And it's interesting because they went out of their way to try to take care of the guys who have endeared themselves to the organization, the Max Crosbys, the Adam Butlers, the Isaiah Palomals, the AJ Coles. So, but Christian Wilkins, not so much. So that's a message to me that's being sent. And sometimes you need to send that when you're taking over a new regime. And sometimes those messages help you more in the long run than the immediate loss of Christian Wilkins.
Absolutely. Pete Carroll's whole thing is he's building a culture. And if Christian Wilkins didn't want to be a part of that, we're better off without him.
Absolutely.
I wish him well. But
yep, and Raider fans, I promise you, until more comes out, this is the last you're going to hear from Christian Wilkins. We're going to focus more on the guys who are part of our roster and not the guys that we've lost. So let's go into the training camp. We've had 4 days of training camp. From all reports, it's been really smooth, really energetic, really tough on the guys. And I love hearing that. I love hearing guys say this has been the toughest training camp they've ever been a part of, and things like that, because it shows that they are really dedicated to putting forth the effort to put a winning product on the field.
I agree. One of the things that stood out to me the most, which I really like, is a guy like Tommy Eichenberg getting first team reps, Jordan Meredith getting first team reps at center, Zakarian Richardson getting first team reps at corner. To me, it's just in typical Pete Carroll fashion, the competition is real. I feel like every head coach speaks about competition, and sometimes it's truer more so than other times. Sometimes I think it's just coach speak, and they kind of have guys penciled in where they want them. Pete Carroll's all about competition, and it's going to be competition at every roster spot, every position throughout the roster. The competition is real. It's going to bring out the best in each individual. It's going to help build depth and just a competitive nature, a competitive mindset when we start taking on other teams. I love it. It's very real with Pete Carroll.
Absolutely. And, so some of the reports actually, we have some interesting reports that came out over the last couple of days from people like Vinny Bonsignori. Talked a lot about the 11 personnel that's being used on the field with the first team, and that was more Trey Tucker, Dante Thornton, and Jacoby Myers. So Jack Besh, who is the second round pick right now, is running with the twos. That goes along with what you said about competition. You alluded to Jay, who's been kind of a star of training camp, at least in the media, him running with the twos for Jordan Meredith today. We talked about one thing that really was interesting to me was the usage of Jamal Adams, and actually Jamal Adams being listed as a weak side linebacker. You want to talk a little bit about that and what that means for the Raiders?
Yeah, when we signed him, the first thing I thought of was he could be, our nickel linebacker. I think it makes all the sense in the world. I like Roberts in the middle. I like Pratt. And we'll see. Like you had mentioned in a previous podcast, Patrick Graham has a history of getting the best out of linebacker play, and that includes in coverage. But the one knock on Roberts is the coverage. So we'll see. Maybe on third down, that could be a great role for Adams. It's not all that different from what he was doing at the safety position anyways. He was always at his best around the line of scrimmage, in the box, great pass rusher, great blitzer. I love the idea, and I think he adds a chess piece for Graham and Carroll to get a little creative with.
Yeah, he's everything that the Raider Nation wanted Jonathan Abram to be. Yeah. And to me, the only thing that stops him is health. Hopefully that we can get a healthy season at him. The guy probably deserves to have a little bit of luck go his way. But what's interesting to me is that when you lost Robert Spillane and Divine Diablo, that linebacker core was very bare. That cupboard was empty. And now that what used to be a weakness has seemed to be a strength with the addition of Landon Roberts, Devin White, Jermaine Pratt, and now putting Jamal Adams in that linebacker room makes it a very difficult room for anybody to make. You got these guys, some seventh round picks and some younger guys who are really going to have a tough time trying to make the roster because these vets still have something in the tank and something to prove.
I agree. But with that said, Tommy Eichenberg getting first team reps today. So, maybe he's coming into his own as well, just to add one more guy into that competition. I agree. Very quickly, it became a very competitive room.
Yeah, to me, it seems like it's just an example of coaches saying, you know what, we're going to put the best players on the field and we'll figure it out where they're going to play. That's what Jamal Adams and these guys look. Obviously, majority of football nowadays is in a nickel package where you have two linebackers on the field. Well, the Raiders are in a situation where they may want to play four linebackers on the field if you can count Jamal Adams as a linebacker. So to me, it's just, hey, let's get the best players on the field and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's almost, a lot of different chess pieces. Like I said, you could almost have to a degree, almost a positionalist type of defense and get super creative with, Carroll and Graham and the rest of the staff. And each of these guys could play all different roles and all different kinds of packages and really, give the offense fits.
Yeah, absolutely. So we here at the Silver and BlackCast, we actually have some friends that are actually some of the beat writers for the Raiders, and they got boots on the ground. And we're not going to mention anybody's names, but just some things that they sent out to us from practice that they noticed is some of the things when it came to special teams. They talked about how Daniel Carlson and AJ Cole were both doing kickoffs, and they were both working on a helicopter-like movement with the ball flying in the air, trying to get some depth and height on it with the ball spinning like a helicopter propeller, which I thought was interesting. They also talked about how on offense you could see how Chip Kelly was trying to attack all three levels of the defense, for both vertically and horizontally. Talked about very little running in camp, and I'm guessing that has to do with the fact that they don't have pads, but yes, a lot of receiving reps for the running backs, trying to get those guys out in space. And some of the other things they talked about was just how sharp all three quarterbacks look. Very few balls on the ground, and my favorite message of the day was Thornton's speed is for real. Al Davis is smiling. I love that. I love that message. And thoughts on any of that, Rocco?
Love the Al Davis pick, as you know. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head as far as the running. I think that's just, that's a result of the practice being what it is right now without the pads. I think that'll change starting tomorrow. The special teams is interesting. I think Tom McMahon's trying to stay ahead of the curve with with the rule changes. I know it changed slightly again from last season. So any competitive advantage he could come up with there would be great. But Thornton's the takeaway there. I'm trying to keep my expectations in check, but I'm getting really excited about Thornton.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they use him, and if he's a big enough factor in the regular season, or is he going to be the Dylan Lobby of the preseason last year? For the Raider fans who remember, Dylan Lobby was getting a lot of pub about how big of an impact he was going to have, and the guy barely sniffed the field. So I don't think that's going to happen with Dante Thornton, but let's hope he's more on the DJ Glaze trajectory and less on that Dylan Lobby trajectory. Last thing before we move on to second down, we had a lot of press conferences over the last couple of days. We've had Pete Carroll, Ashton Jeanty, Chip Kelly, Tyree Wilson, Mostert, Gino, Brock. Anything that any of those guys say really stand out to you, Rocco?
I just find Chip Kelly to be so likable. I thought, maybe had a bit of a reputation when he took over as head coach with Philly. I don't know if he was butting heads with the front office were some of the rumors, maybe even some of the players, and maybe he got a little bit of a reputation, not too bad, but a little bit of a reputation. I just find him so likable in all his dealings with the media since we hired him, and he speaks intelligently, and I'm super excited that he'll be calling the plays for us this year.
Yeah, the thing that I love that about Chip Kelly, we know how dynamic his offenses could be, but I agree. I don't know Chip Kelly very often, but and I thought he was going to give him more of a Bill Belichickian vibe, and that's not him at all. Seems like very jovial, very, very intelligent. So that was pretty cool. I also thought the interview with Tyree Wilson was great when it comes to how him moving around and if he's going to have an opportunity to fill that void by Christian Wilkins. I did like hearing that, one of the first plays of the training camp, he beats the offensive lineman, gets back there for a sack. It would have been a strip fumble. So I really love that. I love to see Tyree Wilson growing, and hopefully he's a big impact for us this year.
I agree. I'm starting to get the feel he's going to play more and more on the inside. And maybe even play that 3 technique even on early downs, which I think is exciting. We'll see. I mean, they might move him around, but I know you had mentioned he's been putting on size so he could hold his own inside from a strength standpoint. As long as he could do that, his athleticism inside against the guards could really be a big advantage for him. So I like that idea.
Yeah, there was a lot of comparisons his rookie year or his NFL draft profile where people compared him a lot to Chris Jones, I'm sorry, from the Chiefs. So, maybe he puts on another 10, 15 pounds and next thing you know, he's a similar frame and size and things like that. And you never know what you get, but sometimes a simple adjustment to their position where they're rushing from, couple that with some maturity and building their body. Sometimes all of a sudden the light turns on for these guys, and next thing you know, you might have a monster there, and Christian Wilkin leaving might end up being a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've not given up hope that he could still be the player we drafted. Even if not, he's become, better and better each year. I certainly expect him to be better, and let's hold out hope that he makes that leap. It happened a little later for Malcolm Kuntz. It could happen that way for Tyrese Wilson too, especially maybe inside. Playing more inside is kind of what unlocks him.
Absolutely. So that's it for first down here, Raider Nation. We're moving on to second down, where we're going to break down our wide receivers and our tight ends and compare it to our division counterparts. So let's start with the wide receiver room. Obviously, the wide receiver room starts with Jacoby Myers, who's obviously been a very productive receiver with us. I remember when we first signed him, Rocco, you were already super high on him. You thought that he was going to be better than Darren Waller was for us when we lost Darren. I had my reservations, but, it looks like you might be right. So I'll let you take lead off with Jacoby Myers.
Well, and I hope he does well with Miami. I think I was just a little early on seeing maybe Darren Waller's play was slipping a little bit before others. But again, let's hope he does well with Miami until we maybe play him. Jacoby Myers, I'm on record. I'll go ahead and say he's the most underrated player in the NFL. 0 drops last year, can play inside, outside, catches everything within reason. Good blocker, good team guy, no diva. I mean, just this is the type of guy you win with. Just my kind of guy, my kind of receiver. Love the guy. I hope we sign him to an extension tomorrow. I think the world at Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, without question. I mean, look, this guy, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about a 0% drop rate in the NFL. He's the only wide receiver with a 0% drop rate. And even that, if you listen to Chip Kelly's latest press conference, he talked about that Jacoby considers himself actually dropping one ball in Denver that was actually tipped. So they gave him credit for a tip ball, but Jacoby thinks he should have caught it anyway. But that just shows the perfectionist that he is. Did record over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career in his 6th year, and he did that in 15 games, 87 receptions, 0 drops. And even last year, the year before, he only had a 1.9% drop rate ratio. So this guy does not drop the ball. If you get it in his area, he's catching it. And he did that with very, very, very poor quarterback play with Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ridder. No slight to Aiden O'Connell, but Aiden O'Connell. So those guys, only with the addition of Geno Smith, the addition of Chip Kelly, you can only imagine that this guy is going to go through the roof and have an opportunity for a breakout year if you don't consider last year his breakout.
I'm glad you said that. I was going to make the same point. It was 0 drops, 0 drop rate, and a lot of those catches were not necessarily easy with the quarterback play he had. The quarterback play is going to be so much better this year with Geno. I'm reading they have a good connection already. Who knows what kind of numbers he could put up this year. People like to say, oh, he's good, but maybe he's not a number one. Well, let's see him play with Geno Smith. Maybe he is a number one. And if he's not a number one, he's a 1B. And we also have a guy named Brock Bowers. But point is, one of, if not the most underrated player in the league, and just a winner.
Yeah, the guy, to me, if the Raiders do not re-sign him, then they're dropping the ball. I mean, and I don't want to just put the blame on the organization, because obviously it's a business deal. He has a value where he thinks he's worth, and the team does as well. And sometimes those don't meet. But he's the kind of guy that you want in your organization. He's a guy who's going to work hard, has 0 ego. He's a productive player. He's still young. There should be no reason why that guy's not getting re-signed unless what he's asking for is outlandish.
Agreed.
That leads us to the number 2 wide receiver currently right now on the depth chart, which is Trey Tucker, a man with great speed, a little undersized, but is used in a plethora of ways. Usually on the deep ball, he's been used for the most part. I personally would like to see them get the ball in his hands a little bit more horizontally recently in the future, not just running deep routes all the time like he's Johnny Holton out there. But I think the guy's talented. We've saw many times that he's got a guy beat and missed passes, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell missing him when he's got created separation. So hopefully Geno, we talked about last episode, being so great with the deep ball, Trey Tucker, a much feared weapon on this team.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better myself. I apologize. I don't have the exact metric in front of me, but I saw one of the advanced metrics was that he was in the top 5 of receivers hurt most by inaccurate passes. That won't be the case this year with Geno Smith. We're all excited about Thornton's speed. Trey Tucker brings the same type of speed and big playability. And I love your point about using that speed in the most obvious ways down the field vertically, but with Chip Kelly, I think he's going to get a lot more creative and use that speed in all different ways, horizontally, screens, end arounds, whatever, jet sweeps, whatever the case may be. I think you're right on the money with that.
Yeah, he just, to me, one of those guys you just got to touch the ball. He's got to touch the ball,
in space.
Yes, 2, 3.
Get him the ball. Get him the ball.
Just give him the ball 3-4 times a game and see what he can do with it. He's got special speed and he's small. And sometimes those small guys get lost and he's got opportunity for big plays. Next wide receivers on that depth chart will be the rookies. We'll start with Jack Best. He was the 2nd round pick. He got to camp just on time. We got him signed just in the nick of time. A big body, tough guy who can block, who could run across the middle, can catch, very physical guy. And I think he's the type of guy that the Raiders are trying to build their program around because they want to be able to run the ball. They're going to have wide receivers who are willing to block to help Ashton Genty and the rest of the running backs get to that second level. And I think Jack Best can do that. It's interesting to me, Jack Best, with his skill set, is very reminiscent of guys like Jacoby Myers. And I'm curious if the drafting of Best may have any impact on whether they do re-sign Jacoby Myers.
We'll see how that plays out. That's a question for another day. As far as this season, them being, similar in style could be beneficial. I know some people think that's an overlap, but if they're both coming out of the huddle and they have similar skill sets, Chip Kelly could get very creative in how they use them. And you don't know which one's lining up inside, which one's lining up outside. Chip Kelly could use that to his advantage. And I know everybody's super excited about Thornton, as am I. But I saw Besh caught a long touchdown today. So he's doing well also. So, it's going to be a great competition there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that he has the ability and the mindset and the maturity and the physicality to be an impact on this team. We'll see what that equates to as far as statistical. I'm not saying the guy's going to go out there and have 1,000 yards as a rookie, but I do think he's going to make an impact with this team. And that leaves us to Dante Thornton. And I know this is your guy, so I'll let you take this one. Raider Nation, buckle up. Buckle up, Raider Nation.
He's not my guy. He's Al Davis's guy. It's just he's a super freak. In the history of the combine, there's only 2 other players that size to run that fast, and that was Calvin Johnson and DK Metcalf. Let that sink in for a second. In the history of the combine, that's that size and speed, only 2 other players. So that's the kind of potential this kid has. The reason he went later in the draft, not a lot of production for whatever reason, little raw. But then, you're hearing from the very first OTAs, and it seems to be continuing into the first week of training camp, that he's looking good immediately, and it's hard to keep the expectations in check.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Look, this guy is a weapon. He's a weapon. He averaged 25.4 yards a reception in college. 25.4. It's a quarter of the football field. So and led the NCAA with that. And so he is a weapon. He's big. He is fast. It's like we said before. Some guys run a 4.3. He runs a 4.3. This guy's like 4.3 flat. He's closer to 4.2 than he is a 4.3. So this guy is spectacular as far as athletic specimen, and I can't wait to see what he does on the field. Is there any other wide receivers you want to highlight before we move on, Rocco?
I think you really touched on them all. We said the other day, Philip Dorsett, veteran who's had some success in the league. I got a soft spot for him. Ex-University of Miami guy. And we'll see. I don't know. Maybe one or two guys that you wouldn't think will emerge. But those seem to be the guys at the top of the depth chart at the moment.
Yeah, and I think when you compare our wide receiver room to our division rivals, I think that we hold up well. It's kind of interesting. The AFC West is a power division, but they almost are not, like, as far as from the wide receiver room, they're not overwhelming. So if you were to say that our wide receiver, take your pick, whereas Thornton or Besh or Tucker with Jacoby Myers, I think it matches up well with the Chiefs, who have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, or the Chargers, who have Quentin Johnson and Ladd McConkey, or the Broncos, who have Marvin Mims and Courtland Sutton. So no one has just a dynamic number one guy who's just a top 10 player in the NFL. But so I think our wide receiver room stacks up just nicely with our competitors. And I think that with Chip Kelly calling the shots, they may be able to outdo a lot of them.
With Chip Kelly calling the shots and with Geno Smith throwing the ball, finally We've got a quarterback. That's the biggest part of all of that, right?
Absolutely. So now we're going to move on to our tight end room. And this is a fun room. It's interesting because this year we talked about drafting Ashton Jeanty and Rocco having a huge man crush on Ashton Jeanty and jumping up and down for that pick. Last year, he was just as excited for Brock Bowers. Maybe didn't have the same reaction immediately, more so because he was almost surprised by the pick. But before the draft even started, he was telling us how dynamic Brock Bowers is. And you're saying that this guy is historically a great tight end, and he proved that as a rookie. So let's talk about Brock Bowers for us.
Yeah, he is one of the greatest college tight ends of all time. I said that about Jeanty, is legitimately one of the greatest college football running backs of all time. You've got one of the all-time greats at running back in college, and you got one of the all-time greats at tight end. That's some serious firepower. And unlike Jeanty, and I'm sure he will, Bowers has already proven it. Broke every rookie tight end record known to man. He is our number one receiver. And I think people kind of say, oh, they don't have a number one receiver, but they do have Bowers. Like, it's almost like a but, like it's a caveat. He's a legitimate number one receiver. Not only do I not care that he's a tight end and he's our number one receiver, I think there's almost some advantages from a matchup standpoint when your best receiver is a tight end.
We've seen the Chiefs win championships for years with it, right?
You took the words out of my mouth.
And the Patriots.
I think it's in a way with a guy like Chip Kelly coordinating the offense. I think it can be even more difficult for the defense to defend that number one receiver when he's a tight end. You can move him all around the formation, and he's a special player. He was a special player from day one, and he's only going to be that much better this year.
Well, Bill Belichick is on record of saying this, is that, look, great tight ends are hard to take away. He said, with wide receivers, you could take them away with scheme. But with tight ends, you have to take them away with personnel. And let's be honest, it's just not a lot of teams have the type of personnel to be able to take that guy away. Yeah. So that's just when you have one of those guys, it's just a game wrecker. And some of those records talked about, and boy, did he break some records. He was finished with 112 receptions with 1,194 yards, 5 touchdowns. Those records had been in place since Mike Ditka. Mike Ditka played. I mean, this guy played before I was even born, before most of us are born. And these records Brock Bowers broke. He was rated from PFF as the 3rd overall tight end with an overall grade of 85.1 and a receiving grade of 88.4. This guy was just dynamic. And so my question to you is, what's the next steps for this guy to continue his greatness?
Oh, I'm sure he could still get better. It's probably hard for you and me to tell you how, considering how great he was, but he's the type of guy, he's going to be his own worst critic, and that's got nothing to do with stats. I don't know, what his stats are going to look like. He might match those. He may not even match those, but that doesn't necessarily mean he isn't improving. That might just mean better distribution of the ball to other weapons. But listen, as great as he was still a rookie. I'm sure he can improve his blocking. I'm sure I couldn't tell you what it is because he was that great, but I'm sure he could tell you there's 100 things that he could do better, and he will do better.
So let me ask you this. He was the tight end single season record for receiving yards was held by Kelsey and had 1,416 yards. Bowers was 222 yards away from that. The reception record is 116 by Zach Ertz. He was 5 receptions away from breaking that record. Is this guy going to have an opportunity to break these records next year?
He certainly could. As you know, I'm not the biggest stats guy. I don't necessarily. He certainly could because he's that great and he's only going to get better from here. To me, I think we're going to have a better running game. I think we're going to run the ball better. I think we got better weapons around him. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, I think he's going to be even better than he was last year, and his impact will be even that much better, but it might not result in, better stats and breaking all these records you're talking about.
That's true. Or we could say that he's got a better offense, got more weapons, so you can't focus on him, and he's got a quarterback that can actually pass him the ball. And next thing you know, this guy here is revolutionizing the game as far as what the expectations statistically for a tight end. This guy had more catches than any rookie at any position ever.
It's mind-boggling.
With Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ridder, and Aiden O'Connell, and Luke Getsy.
He legitimately was the greatest rookie tight end in the history of the NFL.
With Luke Getsy. So, this guy, he's
special. He's very, very, very special. Very special.
We live in a world where maybe 2-3 years from now, you sit there and say that you have the best player at multiple positions in the league at their position. So, and it's exciting place to be for the Raiders. So next up, let's talk about Michael Mayer, who I think is going to have a breakout year. Maybe not statistically. Obviously, there's only one football, so I'm not sitting there saying he's going to have 1,000 yards or 800 yards or some kind of huge statistical number. But for him, I think he's going to break out. I think that Chip Kelly and his offense, he needs a blocking tight end because they really do focus on the running game. But those tight ends tend to leak out into the flats. They tend to get very involved in short receptions that could turn into long runs after the catch. And I think that's a place where Michael Mayer can thrive. I also think he was really known well in Notre Dame for high pointing balls and winning contested catches. So I can see him really being a threat in the red zone. And I think he's going to end up having a really good year. And it's going to be one of those things where you sit there and say, hey, maybe not statistically that he just dominated, but, he just made big plays and big moments and helps us win games.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I'm very happy that he's back healthy, feeling great. Pete Carroll has mentioned a few times what a great offseason he's had. And I think we're going to see, this time last year, the two tight end, base formation was all the talk, and it never really got a chance to materialize last year. I think you're going to see that this year. I think we're going to be in two tight end sets a lot, and probably a good amount of three tight end sets. And I just think it's just such a difficult matchup, as we spoke about a little bit with Bowers, when you have the two tight ends, and they're both good blockers, they're both good receivers to varying degrees, but they both can do both. How does the defense match up? Do they go, with quicker, smaller personnel defending, looking to defend the pass? Do they go with a, more of a base traditional, alignment to try to stop the run? And then, it's chess. And then Chip Kelly picks his poison from there. And I think Mayer's going to have a good year. And just the fact that he is going to be, that dangerous weapon, and pairing him with Bowers, I think it's going to give defenses headaches.
Yeah, and you mentioned three tight end sets, and I think that's be wrong not to mention Ian Thomas, who came over this year from Carolina, and he's having a really good camp from all reports. A guy who's been there for 6 years, played 99 games, had just over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns in those seasons in Carolina. He's a guy who's making some great catches in camp. He's also known for being a good blocker, and I do think we're going to see a lot of three tight end sets with him. And he might be able to make a little bit of an impact. And you never know, especially in this game where health is so important. Obviously, we saw due to mental health last year took Michael Mayer's year away for as a second-year player. And when you have a guy like Ian Thomas, if something were to happen with one of those guys goes down, obviously he can't replace the receiving talent of Brock Bowers, but having a good player there to help mitigate the loss definitely helps.
Yeah, solid veteran will contribute on those three tight end formations like you just talked about, and provides depth. Everything's been very positive about the offseason he's had, so very nice addition.
It's very interesting to me also is that not saying this is going to happen. They seem to be with their tight end room right now. But I did see that Noah Fant was released. He was a tight end that was drafted in the first round by the Broncos, was actually played for Pete Carroll in that trade for Russell Wilson. He played there for about 3 years. I know he's visiting the Saints. I don't think he's signed yet, but I'd be interested to see if Pete Carroll wants to bring him in just to have that more competition. He's a guy that obviously he's familiar with and obviously liked on his roster.
Yeah, I don't see that one. I don't know. This isn't fantasy football. I don't see where he fits on this roster. Talented player, but I don't see the fit.
And if we're comparing, obviously, the tight end rooms, I think the Raiders have not only the best tight end room in the division, but they might have the best tight end room in the NFL in general. If you look at you're comparing Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer to guys like Travis Kelce, who is still terrific but aging. Evan Ingram, who will be interesting in Denver, because I know that Sean Payton really wanted that Joker kind of player. So I think Evan Ingram may be a problem. And in Chargers, they have Disley and Conklin, who are, two middling type of tight ends. So I definitely think that the Raiders are leading the pack when it comes to the tight end room in the AFC West.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you said, not just the AFC West, the entire league.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to take us out of second down. Now we're going to go into third down. Let's deep dive into Rocco's thoughts and your mind and what you got for us today, Rocco.
Okay. So with the release of Christian Wilkins, it just got me thinking, and I went back and looked, just at some of the big ticket free agents we had signed in recent years. Yeah, it's not pretty. You're not going to leave the room again, are you? Don't leave. Okay. Don't leave. It's okay. So Wilkins, obviously last year, the year prior, Jimmy G, 3 years, $72 million. The year before that, Chandler Jones, 3 years, $51 million. The year before, our boy Corey Littleton that we were excited about, 3 years, $35 million. The year before that, Trent Brown, big contract. I mean, there were others, Bilal Nichols, fairly big, Tyrell Williams. So, I bring that up not to kill, the past Raiders regimes, and not to say to never take your shot at a big ticket free agents. I think you have to be strategic and take those shots at times and make sure you get it right. But my point is, I don't know that track record is so unusual around the league. I think a lot of these big ticket free agent signings don't work out. And it brings me to my real point is it further cements, I like what Spytek did this offseason, okay? He didn't chase any of those big ticket free agents. We had a few of our own guys who got big offers. We let them walk and replace them with guys who we think are just as good, maybe better, on cheaper deals, right? You supplement that with the draft, his strategy in the draft. He traded down 2-3 times, acquired 11 picks, right? It's just a very, value-based type of approach to building the roster. And then you spend some money, locking up a Max Crosby to a big contract extension. That makes obviously all the sense in the world. Yeah. We did prioritize Malcolm Kuntz. We did prioritize Adam Butler. You go out, you make a trade, you find yourself a franchise type of quarterback, you sign him to a big contract. So I just thought it was very intelligent how we spent our money, how we used our cap space. And I think it's a little bit of a different approach from the past. And I think it was the right approach for building this team's roster and, setting us up for more success in the future. So it just cemented that I really liked Spytek's approach this offseason.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you look at the history of those big deals, most of them they just don't work out. They end up being cut 2-3 years later, whether that's due to age, whether it's due to injury, whether it's due to lack of production. And very few times do they end up making it a huge impact. I mean, look at even Khalil Mack. I mean, Khalil Mack was at the peak of his career, got traded for 2 first-round picks, went to Chicago, had a really good couple seasons, beat up and hurt, and then on the street to a different team 3 years later. So a lot of times this happens, and I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, it's just getting your guys in there, letting them fit your system, letting them fit your culture, and making it work with those guys as opposed to bringing in someone from outside the building. And you can't use that as a consistent metric to win because obviously history has shown that that's not going to work out.
Yeah. You draft Bowers last year. I spoke about at some point you just need a little bit. Not a little bit. You need as much as possible, just some superstars on your team, especially in offense if you want to score points. Well, now you got that with Bowers. Mm-hmm. And we're pretty confident we got that with Genty. All of a sudden, very quickly, you could have one of the best tight ends in the league and one of the best running backs in the league. That's the nucleus of an explosive, high-scoring offense, and it's through the draft. They're young, they're homegrown. It's just such a better approach, as opposed to trading for a Devontae Adams and signing him to a big contract. If you could actually draft these guys, it's to me, this is the best way to go about building the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sit there and look at the Bucs where Spytek came from, and that's what they did. They led the league in homegrown talent on their roster, and that was after the winning a Super Bowl with Tom Brady and the roster being very old, and they turned it over very quickly with their own homegrown talent. So I think you're right. I think that it was the right move for the Raiders, even though they have this money, to maybe be a little frugal or be measured with their spending and not go after some of those big names. And I think, as you said, Christian is just the tale of why you Raider Nation. That brings us to fourth down. Dr. O, can you we got any questions in the mailbag for us this week?
Hey, gentlemen, how you guys doing?
Great, man.
We got a couple questions for you. All righty. Give me a second. Love what you guys are talking about. Soaking it all up. All right. All right. Okay. All right. Here we go. Who will emerge as the Raiders' third most important receiving weapon after Meyers and Bowers in 2026?
All right. Third weapon, it's going to be interesting because you got Jacoby Myers and you got Brock Bowers. And it could be so many people. It could be, I'm curious to find out, is it going to be one guy who takes the leap and becomes that third receiver, or is it just receiver by committee? Is it 1 week Dante Thornton, 1 week Trey Tucker, 1 week Michael Mayer, or is it Mayer just takes the bull by the horns and he's just the third guy? So to me, it's up in the air, but it's going to be interesting to see if Chip Kelly does fall in love with one guy, or maybe it's Besh. Who knows? What do you think, Rocco?
Yeah, I think it will be a committee approach. I think you're right on the money there. And so I'll just add to that. We're talking receivers, but Genti out of the backfield, Genti, and maybe not just out of the backfield, maybe lined up and out wide in the slot, whatever. He's got that receiving ability. Chip Kelly has a very creative mind. Genti's going to be a big part of in the passing game, catching passes himself.
Absolutely. What's next? What you got, Doc?
Okay. All right. So here's the next question. Will the Raiders receiving corps develop better depth in 2026? And who will be the standout surprise player?
I'll let you take lead off, Rock.
I don't know about the depth. That's a good question. I think the depth is good because it's just like, as we talked about, it's a committee approach. We don't have two guys on the outside and those are our guys and one guy in the slot. It's the tight ends. It's two tight ends. It's a third tight end. It's the two rookie receivers with Mayer, with Tucker. So the depth is good. I don't know who's behind them that might step up. I don't know that I have a surprise for you. What's not going on?
Hey, I don't know about the surprise. I think, the surprise, if you were looking by draft position, you would say maybe Dante Thornton. But I think that he's gotten enough notoriety thus far in camp that it wouldn't be a surprise if he had a good season. It'll be more of a surprise if he wasn't an impact.
Right.
So if I'm going to go with surprise, I'm going to go with Trey Tucker.
Yeah. Trey
Tucker is a guy who I think has been misutilized and missed when he's open. And I think he could be a guy that you see, they just want to get the ball in his hands and becomes more of a weapon. As far as the depth goes, I am curious with the depth when it comes to the wide receiver room, because we are going to be so heavily relied on rookies and young guys. We're going to be relying on these two picks, as well as Trey Tucker, who's going into year 3, and that's 75% of our wide receiver room. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
Tonto's killing me.
No, I know, man. You got like ants in your pants over there, bro. You right? It's Christmas, bro. It's guy here. All right, next question, Tonto.
Searching.
Tonto, you're on mute. Good God, Raider Nation, I'm so sorry. I don't know what our on-air producer is doing right now, but he's not doing right now. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. Sincerely,
Come on,
I'm sorry, man. It's like herding cats over here. Okay, I'm sorry.
Just close the door.
Okay,
close the door.
Okay. All
Raider
right.
Nation, you don't know Dr. O's got 2 kids that are under the age of 2 or under the age of 3, so they're running around him. Probably like he said, herding cats. But that's neither here nor there. We're here for Raider News. We're here for questions.
It's a madhouse. Okay, all right. Third question. How much of a factor will rookie offensive linemen play in the 2026 season?
Rookie offensive lineman. You know what? It's interesting because I do think that guys he's referring to Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant, and I think both those guys have an impact, have an opportunity to make an impact, especially with the offensive line depth, because we all do know that unless you're the Buffalo Bills, your offensive line is going to get hurt. And I say the Buffalo Bills because they've literally gone 2 straight seasons with the same offensive line, not missing, I think missing like 10 snaps or something like that.
Wow, I did not know that.
It's crazy. So for the Raiders, these guys are going to have an opportunity to compete for a role. I think Caleb Rogers is in the middle of a battle to have an opportunity to start at that guard position, fighting with Parham and Meredith and Kappa. I don't think he'll win that. If he does win it, it's great, but I do not think he will win that. But I do think in the future he's going to be a starter on our offensive line. I think the same goes for Charles Grant. I think he's the guy who's learning. He's big. He's athletic. He's got to learn behind Colton Miller. And I think depending on his development will play a big role in whether Colton Miller gets re-signed by this Raiders front office.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much I can add to that. That was a great breakdown. I think Rodgers is in the mix. He's closer to having a chance to winning playing time. Maybe be one of those things where he plays later in the season as he gains more and more experience. Not necessarily game experience, but just gets more comfortable as a rookie. So, I think he's got a little bit of a better shot, but most likely they're going to add depth and hopefully step up if we need him for injury. But they definitely have a big part of our future.
Absolutely. All right, what's next, Dr. O? You're on mute.
Should the Raiders look into trading for another weapon like Terry McLaurin?
Wow, so that's a tough one, man. That's a really tough one. Terry McLaurin, for those of you guys who are unfamiliar, he's the terrific wide receiver from Washington. He's been pretty much a 1,000-yard receiver since he came out. The Raiders were high on him coming out of the Senior Bowl with John Gruden. Really liked him. He got drafted in the 3rd round out of Ohio State. He's been a 1,000-yard receiver, as I said, for most of his career. But now he's going on age 30 season. He's going to cost a lot of money. That's the problem right now with Jaden Daniels there in Washington and the connection they have building. But he wants to be paid like a top wide receiver. And while the Raiders have the funds, I don't know if they have the inclination to want to bring in that number 1 guy before they have an opportunity to find out what they have in Jack Bech and Dante Thornton.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun speculation and never say never. Crazier things have happened, but as fun as it is to talk about it, I don't see it happening. I don't see him getting out of Washington to begin with what they have going on there with the young quarterback. And I don't see it making sense for us right now.
Yeah, I agree. I look, if they made the move for him, I'd be the first one celebrating because the thoughts of Jacoby Myers, Terry McLaurin, and Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty with Geno Smith, that's a scary combination. But there is one football, and it's going to be hard to justify the contract and the trade capital you have to give up to get them. I would guess that it's going to take at least a 2 plus something else, probably a 2nd round and a player, or a 2nd, 5th, or something like that to get them. But that being, if the Raiders are making comments that they are going for it, they're trying to win now. They're not trying to ramp up anything. They're trying to get after it. And so that is a win now type of move. And so to me, that trade would only signify that they don't think that Jack Bech and Dante Thornton are ready. And it also would probably signify that they are not planning on giving that money to Jacoby Myers as well. So I don't see it happening, but like you said, crazier things have happened, and I wouldn't be mad. I would not be mad about it.
Nor would I.
All righty. Okay, final question. How will the Raiders receiving core be affected by changes in the quarterback position and play calling in 2026?
they're going to be affected very positively by both. I don't know what else to say to that. I mean, our quarterback play and play calling, with due respect to Scott Turner, I thought Scott Turner did a nice job. But when I say this, I mean Getsy. The quarterback play and the play calling was terrible last year, and it's going to be light years better this year. And all the receivers, including the tight ends and the backs out of backfield, everybody's going to benefit from that big time.
Yeah, I mean, I think Geno Smith is one huge upgrade, obviously. But Chip Kelly is as well. I mean, you're talking about two huge upgrades in both those areas, as well as maybe a little bit of some new blood in there with the rookies as well to add to that depth. I think that the pass catchers in general are going to be able to put up more than 18 points a game. Let's put it that way. The Raiders' offensive output over the last 5 or 6 years has been atrocious. And, we need to be closer to that 24 points a game if you want to win consistently in this league. And we've been struggling to get to 20. So adding a Chip Kelly, adding a drafting an Ashton Genty, the evolution of a Brock Bowers, those things are how you put points on the board. And you're going to see huge, huge opportunities for these players, for these pass catchers to make plays.
100%.
All right, Raider Nation. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Silver and BlackCast. Come hit that like and subscribe button. We'd love to have you guys come back for our next episode where we discuss the offensive line as well as what's going on with Raider Nation right now. Until then, guys, win, lose, or tie, Raider Nation till we die. Just win, baby.
Just win.
Just win.